So we're recording. Hello, Sophie. I'm Lisa Illichmann here together with Sophie. I'm in Austria, southern Austria. Sophie's in France. Both of us are in, I believe, week 2 or week 3. I've lost count of lockdown. We're in confinement, and the people around us are in confinement. And we'd like to talk today a little bit about the subject of being at war with what is. And what is right now is the coronavirus threat. What is right now is confinement. What is right now is perhaps for many people a loss of income. What is right now is perhaps conflict at home in the fact that we're in confined spaces with each other. What is fear of the future. What's it going to mean? So these are all sorts of topics that are perhaps coming up right now that are uncomfortable, and we're a bit at war with them. And perhaps we can start today. Perhaps Sophie can begin touching on the subject of being at war with present circumstances. Being at war with what is how we like to call it. That means not wanting to be in a position of non-acceptance. And perhaps we can then touch on non-acceptance versus passivity, because I think that's a topic. But I'll stop talking now. I'll invite Sophie to begin, and maybe she can give us a few of her thoughts on this war.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. It's true. If we, everyone who is watching this video, we're checking a bit where we're standing. As you said, we're probably, even certainly, being at war with something right now. You already mentioned a few examples. I was looking at myself lately and seeing myself, in kind of war with politicians and the way they're handling the crisis here. Maybe being at war, seeing my neighbors not respecting, what is required from us to stay at home, to respect the distances. And also just being at war with myself, because sometimes this confinement is bringing some challenges. And in reflecting on this topic yesterday and this morning, before we do this recording, I was really wondering, in that situation, with what we can start with. And what came to mind was just, in times of war, where can we find a refuge? So what does it mean to find a refuge? And where? And maybe simply, very simply, just taking refuge within ourselves, taking refuge in this space right here, right now, sitting on my chairs, talking in front of the screen with Lisa, really right here, right now. And when I'm talking about taking refuge, it's really about finding a ground, finding an inner space where we can stay firm, towards the storm that is happening, all around the world. To give an example, kind of a metaphor, it's like, imagine a boat, on the sea, and it's a very stormy time, and there are huge waves, and because of these waves, the boat is, moving like this and like that and like that, and you're part of this movement, but if you turn your attention within, it's like you start to dig in and to plunge into deeper water. And the deeper water won't be affected, by the wind, by the storm, by the rain, by the waves. It doesn't mean that it goes away, but it means you're not taken by it. You don't feel the consequences of that. And this can make a huge difference. And as we've already talked, since we've started this series of videos, there are many ways to cultivate this ability to take refuge through finding an anchor in the present moment, coming back to the breath, for example, coming back to the listening of the sound, coming back to the different sensation in the body. But today, I would like maybe to offer another tool that is a very interesting and important notion in Buddhist psychology, is to take as an anchor and to get interested in what is called feeling tone, or Vedana in Pali, but to be, in another word, much more simply, paying attention to feeling tone is just paying attention to our disliking and our liking, what we like, what we dislike. But what is maybe important here to distinguish is that when we talk about feeling tones here in Buddhism, we're not talking about emotions. We're talking of a kind of a tonality, a kind of an impression, a very brief, a very temporary sensation, oh, I like this, oh, I don't like that. And to give an example, okay, it's springtime now, it's beautiful outside, and you're walking along a path and suddenly you see a flower. The moment your eyes getting in touch, in contact, the seeing with the object, the flower, what happens? Very briefly, very quickly, probably there will be a, oh, I like that. You like it. So this is what we are trying, we want to get interested in. And it's the same, for example, for disliking. You're sitting at a table, somebody is bringing you some food, and you put the food in your mouth, and it tastes very bitter, and you don't like bitterness. And suddenly, at the moment the sense of tasting is in contact with this outside object, the food, there is a disliking. So it's not something complicated. The only difficulty is it is very brief. And what is interesting for us to take as an object of anchor is that in Buddhist psychology, is that right after this moment that this feeling tone, this tonality, this liking or disliking appear, that there will be or not be reactivity. And usually, as we said already, after liking, the reactivity is because it's pleasant. We tend to want to make it last. So we grasp and we develop all sorts of strategies to try to make it last. On the other hand, with an experience that is unpleasant, and that's what we are maybe more concerned in being confined nowadays, is that in being in contact with something that is unpleasant, usually the tendency is to react with aversion, with a certain kind of hatred. And when something is unpleasant and we react, we don't see this moment, and we don't learn just to recognize or try to stay, to hold it. We jump into reactivity, and we develop many strategies, to make it stop. This is unpleasant. I can't bear it. What can I do to avoid it? What can I do to stop it? What can I do to eradicate it? So this is really an interesting area where to work with. I could go on, but maybe I leave you the space. Maybe you want first to say something about that, Lisa. Sophie, sorry, a bit maybe longer.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Yeah. I think in particular when we are in unpleasant circumstances such as now, this is equally true, of course, of pleasant circumstances, but I think we notice it more, or it's most helpful for us to work with this in unpleasant circumstances. This definition of unpleasant is within and not inherent in the circumstances themselves. So it's not the circumstances that are unpleasant, but it's the way we see them that labels them as unpleasant. And so by pushing the circumstances away, we do not make the unpleasantness go away, because the unpleasantness is within us, because it's part of the way we are perceiving the circumstances. And so, of course, by pushing or attempting to push it away or to complain about it, or any number of strategies that we may have of dealing with the what we consider unpleasant circumstances, puts more and more energy into those unpleasant circumstances and makes them worse. It intensifies the situation, and it leaves us believing that we are victims of the circumstances, and we are not victims of the circumstances, because the perception of the circumstances and the interpretation of the circumstances, that's within us. And as you said, you spoke of the quietness and the deepness of the ocean as opposed to the rough waves perhaps at the surface during tumultuous times such as now. This I too have found is the easiest and the most effective and the most long-lasting way of growing through uncomfortable times, is to not seek happiness or not seek satisfaction in the external circumstances, but to go deeper within, to feel, to kind of experience that whatever it is that I'm feeling, and is probably negative, to really come in contact with that feeling deep inside of me, and to stay there with that, to increase my tolerance to the feeling that I don't want to feel right now, and to realize that this feeling comes and goes. This is part of human existence, is the feeling of liking something and the feeling of disliking something, and having what we would call pleasant circumstances, and having unpleasant circumstances, is part of human existence. This is always going to happen. It's an illusion to believe that everything will always be pleasant, but it is exactly the way that we respond to the uncomfortable that makes the difference in our lives. And not being at war with that, to embrace that feeling tone within us, that oh, I don't want this, to stay with that, and to allow that to be within us, to go deep and to become one with that very quiet, deep water, and this unbelievable stillness to just sort of become the space around that uncomfortable feeling. And in this space has been my experience, comes also right action. So it's not passiveness. It's not passive. I accept the negative situation because, in Buddhism, I have learned to accept what is. No, I accept my feeling towards that situation, and I allow that feeling to be within me. I do not resist that feeling within me, and I breathe through that. I feel that, and in the quietness of breathing through that and feeling that, I find I can respond to the outward circumstances. I find a response that is ever so much more helpful than the reaction I would have had in the in not wanting, in the pushing away, and in the pushing away, in the contraction of, oh, I don't want this. The it comes reactivity, and this is generally not a helpful way of moving through uncomfortable situations. And the allowing this to be, and just going into the deep water and seeing the waves above me, and just taking that in my favorite way of, it's okay. It's okay, even in the uncomfortable, it's okay. And to be able to breathe into that and then respond, and out of that stillness to respond. And then I'm no longer, I'm perhaps not at war with the uncomfortable, with the difficult circumstances, but I'm dancing with it, not fighting against it.
Yeah, that's one of the magic of the effect of mindfulness or satin pali, is really to get in touch with a space, with a ground, where a space that is big enough to embrace the totality of what is experienced, whether it's pleasant or whether it's unpleasant, as you were so beautifully describing it. There is no discrimination, there is just an embrace. And when there is this embrace, as you said, we're protected from going to reactivity. And when we don't react to a situation that is unpleasant, that we used to do, because we are seeing that this is happening, we can really respond with more creativity. You said with other words, but we can be. There is more creative response, and probably much more skillful, and probably more infused with kind of wisdom, just because we are not caught up in this reactive patterns we have towards unpleasantness, which is to, as you said, to push away or to deny as well. Deny is also one of the strategies that is very often used by our minds. So that's why it's so interesting to do that. And one of the pillars that can help, I would say, or there are one or two for me at least, is really, first is patience. Patience that is based on the recognition that what I'm experiencing right now, no matter how unpleasant it is not going to last. Because everything that by nature arises and passes away. And really trust that, and not trusting it, very naively, but trusting it because you learn to see it. When you start to, for today we're talking about feeling tone, about if you can connect with the moment you get in contact with something and it's unpleasant, you will see this unpleasantness arises, have a time of living, and after a moment we decrease and it will passes away. So it's a patient that is based on this trust and this understanding that nothing is permanent. The second thing, the second quality that I feel for myself that is so helpful is cultivating, is developing compassion. And compassion in a way that is to learn how to open to what is difficult. And it requires time, it requires care, and it requires also the ability to see what is needed in the moment. You know, sometimes regarding an unpleasant situation, difficult situation, sometimes we have the resources to approach it, you know, because we have enough energy, we're still grounded enough, so we can open to that, because the space is here, is available. Sometimes it's important to recognize we don't have the resources to do that, we cannot. So maybe at that time, to be compassionate, and the wisest response will be to, okay, I can't face that. It's okay. I can't face it. What can I do to bring balance again? Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need a hug? Do I need to have a nice conversation with somebody? Do I need, as I love to say, I need just a little piece of chocolate? You know, it's really to check for oneself what is needed. And compassion, this is that. This is accepting that at some moment we can open, at some moment we cannot. Yeah. Right on time.
Oops. Yes. I'd like to start with the thought of the being, remaining awake in yourself, to notice when you go into this, pushing away, when that negative feeling tone or unpleasant feeling tone comes up, so that I think this is the, one of the key skills that we can develop right now. We're in a wonderful position to do that. That's kind of, I think, the silver lining of where we're at right now, of the situation, is that we have the opportunity to awaken a bit more, and to drop away from autopilot and become much more aware of what's going on inside of us, to take some of our energy away from the external world and to put it into becoming aware of what we're feeling. Not what we're thinking, but really what we're feeling, what we're experiencing at a physical manifestation, and become more friendly to that, which you were saying. Compassion begins, of course, with self-compassion, with allowing ourselves to have bad days and to not be able to handle it, and to fall apart and to come unglued. And that's all okay. It's all part of that journey. The one thing is being at war with what we see in the external world, and then the second war is then we're often at war with the way that we find ourselves dealing with it, and perhaps there to develop more compassion for ourselves. And you said something which I think is very helpful, is to realize when you can't handle it, is to develop some strategies to help yourself. We were laughing. You said now go on a walk, and perhaps if you're allowed, or have that piece of chocolate. I go for the big piece, not for the little piece, just by the way. I'm an all or nothing kind of gal. I like the whole bar, but just to kind of discover, have in place a few things that help you. We were laughing in the beginning about both of us kind of have a little routine, have developed a routine for the day. And routines are, a way to, kind of like a handrail to hold on to. And they make it easier for us to navigate change and to navigate uncertain circumstances. And perhaps they're part of self-compassion, to being nice enough to ourselves, to allow ourselves mistakes, to allow ourselves a little bit of reactivity, and to allow ourselves some strategies, including chocolate, to move through this. Sophie, it's about 25 minutes plus or minus, because I'm bad about turning on the timer. But we've got about 5 minutes. Can you perhaps talk about some go through some very specific strategies that you would suggest that we develop to help us use this time in a productive manner?
Regarding the situation, you mean, we are facing right now?
What can we do?
I think there is something we could really, I've started with that, is to really to pay attention, as much as we can during the day, just to check how we feel. But when I said how we feel, it's not how I think I am, as you said earlier, is to really take this time to pause, just for a minute, just to pause and to feel how is it in my body right now? Is there tension? Is there relaxation? Just to bring you back here, in this moment, in this space. Because in doing so, it's really what I've started with today. It's about coming back home. It's about taking refuge, really. And this is really the starting point to really come to see more clearly, to develop strategy to respond with more friendliness, with all the disliking we may be facing today. It's really the starting point to really remember to come back here and now, and to allow ourselves, to connect with this space within our hearts. And from that perspective, starting to look at things in a more spacious way. That's what we said. I mean, once you connect with that space, it's space. In space there is space for everything, good or bad, light or dark, nice, not nice. It embraces it all. And when you're in that space, you have a broader picture of what's going on. And you start to have the freedom to not react. You start to have the freedom to engage yourself with what is, more skillfully, more creatively. But really, again, the starting point is to remember again and over again, to come back to that space, to come back home, to feel safe, to ground yourself firm in this moment in order to open.
Mm-hmm. And this moment is being in the body, feeling what you're feeling, hearing what you're hearing, and seeing what you're seeing, but most importantly, feeling what you're feeling, and just feeling it. Is this what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, connecting with the present moment is come back to here and now, and come back to here and now is just connecting with what is here. And what is here? A body. Right. What is here is an in-breath, is an out-breath, is hearing, is tasting, is touching, is seeing, is smelling, as you said. And coming back to that again, over and over again, and trusting that this will have an effect on the way you perceive yourself, you perceive the world, you perceive the situation, no matter how hard and complicated they seem to be.
And if I speak from my own experience, it does have an effect. It's a game changer.
It changes
In
it
very
all.
mild terms, it changes everything.
Yeah, it changes everything.
It changes everything. It seems like such a small, insignificant thing, and it's very small, and it's very, very, very significant.
Yeah, it's a slight move, but
Kind
it changes. Yeah, it changes it all.
of changes it all.
Yeah.
So we leave today with the tool of really feeling what you're feeling and checking in on that feeling as often as possible during the day, and knowing that that feeling tone is either going to allow you to skillfully respond if you can be with that feeling tone, or could possibly lead to reactivity if you're at war with that feeling tone, or even worse, if you don't realize that, if you don't even notice that feeling tone. But the feeling tone is there. So get in touch with it, be with it, be kind to it and yourself. And that's probably the easiest way to end the war.
Or to not feed it, at least.
Yes. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Lisa.
I look forward to our next dialogue.
Yeah.